PlayStation Plus was revamped a few months ago, and with that came next gen ports of classic PS1 games, with some even including trophies. Some of these games included are Tekken 2, Toy Story 2, Karushi and Resident Evil. However, it still feels like some crackers are missing. So today, take a trip with me down memory lane as I look at 10 classic PS1 games that I want on PlayStation Plus. Number 10. Tomb Raider. First of all, I want a full remake of the original Tomb Raider trilogy, but if that doesn't happen, I'll be happy enough with the originals being re-released, especially with trophies. I think I've already said what I have to say on the world's most famous animal poacher, so I'll just go through everything that I want. I can live with the tanky controls. In fact, I still think the way the game is designed that the controls suit it. The first 5 are already released as PS3 ports, so I assume that they're on Sony's radar. I'd like to see a creative trophy list, not just one with a completion trophy set similar to Siphon Filters. I personally think that there should be a trophy for dying in every possible way, or completing levels without using medkits. Sign me up for more ideas, lads. All in all, Tomb Raider is still incredibly popular, so I think this one is probable, or at least I'm praying it is. Number 9. Croc. When people think of PS1 classics, Croc seems to fall through everyone's minds, but Croc is such a childhood hero. It's actually sad that he only got 2 games. For those who had a terrible childhood, Croc is a third-person platformer where you control a crocodile that stands on its hind legs and has a backpack. The game is fairly standard and there's nothing too different from the other third-person platformers from that era. However, in its first year it sold 1.5 million copies, which is 500,000 more copies than another famous reptile. That guy went on to become one of the faces of PlayStation, and we got not only a trilogy but a remaster of that trilogy. Absolutely no disrespect to Spyro, but do everyone a favour and finally give Croc the recognition he deserves. Number 8. Medal of Honor. Before Call of Duty took the world by storm, there was Medal of Honor. And here's Lenny's fun fact of the day. It was actually created by Steven Spielberg. Crazy. If you were looking for the best first-person shooter on the market in the PS1 days, then you needn't look further than Medal of Honor. The first game came out in 1999 and it was the first ever non-fantasy World War II game. The combat was really good and the levels were interesting as it mixed in frontline action and behind enemy line stealth. It was a household favourite for years before Activision came along and blew it out of the water. The second game was set in France and you took on the role of a French resistance fighter. The 2 games are fairly similar, but they're both brilliant together. A port of both games to PS5 would be perfect, especially keeping in the cheat codes which allowed you to play as Shakespeare, a German Shepherd and a dinosaur. Nowadays you'd pay 20 quid for that kind of content. Number 7. Future Cop LAPD. One of my favourite PS1 games of all time, Future Cop LAPD is just damn fun. Although I've never actually completed it as the last level was a bit too hard for 8-year-old me. Future Cop was surprisingly set in the future. You take control of X1 Alpha, which is an LAPD mech dedicated to stopping bad guys until they're nothing but a pool of red on the ground. It has 2 game modes which can be played in 2-player split screen. The main campaign has you travel across famous landmarks like Venice Beach and LAX, dispensing justice like some sort of Batman themed vending machine. The secondary game mode, however, called Precinct Assault, is brilliant. And this has you and another player or a CPU attack each other's bases with tanks, helicopters and your own machine guns and rockets. You capture outposts to help build points to buy units with, so it's essentially a deathmatch mixed in with real-time strategy. I feel like Future Cop was ahead of its time, pun definitely intended. And I think a port to next gen and some sweet little trophies to go with it would be a huge success. I just hope there isn't a trophy for finishing the game. Number 6. Pandemonium. Pandemonium is the type of game that everyone has definitely seen before but never remembers owning it or even playing it. This game is a cracker though. The gameplay is fairly simple. It's a 3D side-scroller not too different from Mario. You jump on enemies, collect coins and get power-ups to blast those enemies away. The characters are interesting and it has a story that's fun and doesn't take itself too seriously. Just look at the opening to the game when Nikki is casting spells to make fireworks until she accidentally casts the wrong spell and unleashes Yungu, a giant frog thing that eats an entire village. So the heroes or villains, depending on how you look at it, set out on their adventure to make things right. It's a fun game that will trigger a few childhood memories as if you were sitting in the Animus. It's available to buy on Steam and I'm all for it being brought back to PlayStation, especially with some trophies. You can never forget the trophies. Number 5. Cooler World. Speaking of games that you vaguely remember, here's Cooler World. There's not really much to say about this game other than you play as a ball, collect fruit and avoid being deflated on spikes. It's a really cool puzzle platformer which uses its geometry well with a change of gravity depending on which way the ball is facing. The thing is with this, while I was researching this for the list, I stumbled across a reveal trailer for a game called Gravity Trickster. I decided to take a look and lo and behold it's Cooler World, With updated graphics it looks brilliant and I thought I could finally play my childhood game once again. Only, no, it hasn't been released and there's no talk of it since 2020. So now I sit here alone and sad, well, alone and sadder than usual. The only way that it can be cured is by the original being re-released on PlayStation Plus. So Sony, get on it. Number 4. Disney Interactive Games. It's a general misconception that movies and video games don't go together. However, it's never been a problem for Disney. The studio giant has always seemed to port decent games from their movies, especially in the 90s. As I've said at the start, Toy Story 2 was already on PSPlus, so I think it's about time we get some other classics. Hercules is the first that comes to mind. It's a 2D adventure that lets you play through the events of the movie. It also has one of my favourite boss battles of all time with the fight against the Hydra. Another game is The Emperor's New Groove, and The Emperor's New Groove is easily one of the most underrated Disney movies of all time, and so is its game. It's a third-person platformer made by Argonaut Games, those lads that made Croc, so you know it's going to be good. Another one is A Bug's Life, again a third-person platformer where you go through the events of the movie. All these games are certified classics, and according to General Grievous, they'd make a fine addition to the collection. Number 3. Demo discs. This has brought back memories now, hasn't it? If you were a kid in the late 90s to early 2000s, you've definitely seen one of these glorious discs, usually in a disc holding case. Remember those? The demo discs were used as a way to advertise games and potentially get sales for games by letting players play through a level. Only what they didn't take into consideration was that us kiddos are very easily amused, so instead of pestering our parents to buy the game, we just played that level over and over again. I was introduced to so many different games through the demo discs, although for some reason I would play games that I already have on the demo disc. Like Tomb Raider 3 for example, I had the full game just sitting there, but instead I went to demo disc 36 so I could play the Area 51 level over and over again. I personally think they should bring back some digital version of the demo discs. I know game trials are a thing, but a randomised bunch of games would be so much better. Number 2. Tomba. Speaking of a game that I discovered through demo discs, I'm not really sure what to say about Tomba, as I've only ever played through the first level, so I don't know what the story is, who the characters are, or who the villain is. All I know is you play as a pink-haired child who kills pigs, the gameplay is pretty good, and there's trees that if you jump on them, they fart. What more could you want? Realistically, I just want this game to be on PS Plus because I want to play past the first level. I want to see where the story takes us, what adventure awaits us in a game that I could only play for so long. But most of all, I just want to see the tree farts in 60 frames per second. And seeing as it's published by Sony, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be in the collection. Number 1. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. Soul Reaver is an interesting game. You play as Raziel, a vampire turned wraith seeking revenge on your former master and killer, Kain. It's a third-person action adventure which sees you travel between the realm of the dead and the living to complete puzzles and finally get that sweet, sweet revenge. It's a cool concept that was pretty unique. Soul Reaver is actually the second game of the series, with Blood Omen coming before it, but Soul Reaver was definitely the most popular. The visuals and character models were so different from many games of its time. One thing I loved about Soul Reaver was the variety of gameplay. When in the real world you have to keep up your strength by consuming souls from dead enemies, but that's the simple part. Some enemies are vampires, and if we know anything about vampires, it's that they're kind of immortal. So you have to change up your attack strategy in order to defeat them. This could be impaling them on a stake, throwing them into water, or setting them on fire. All legitimate ways to get rid of them for good. All in all, Soul Reaver was way ahead of its time, and a re-release on PS Plus might just show the world how good it was. So that was the list. Did I miss out on your childhood game? Let me know what it was down in the comments below. This list was definitely catered to the older crowd, so if you don't know what any of these games are, then go back to watching Cocomelon. If you liked the video, give it a like, and if you didn't like it, abuse me in the comments. And as always, subscribe. At the time of recording, I'm on 199 subscribers, so do me a solid and get me to 200. Or 1,000, I don't mind. Anyway, I have been Lenny, and I'll see you next time.